Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacey St. And as always, I am so excited to spend a few minutes with you today. Now, before we dive into this episode, I'm going to share a quote with you that I recently read that resonated with me. And it says, "Hard work keeps the wrinkles out of the mind and the spirit." And those inspiring words come to us from Helena Rubinstein. So brilliant. So brilliant. I will tell you, I have a few extra wrinkles on my face, but as long as my mind and spirit is unwrinkled, I'm cool with that. All right. Now, let's talk about today's episode. We are sitting down with Katie Lyon, and this is such a fun conversation because Katie is sharing all about her journey in doing rental arbitrage with condos. And my friends, you're going to learn some fun things in this episode. I have no doubt. If you've ever thought about rental arbitrage, if you've heard bad things about condos, I think Katie is going to be sharing some incredible nuggets of info with you. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Katie. So today we are joined by Katie Lyon, and we are going to talk all about midterm rentals and the difference between MTRs and STRs. And Katie, I can't wait to pick your brain. But first, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So why don't we just have you start off by sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Katie Lyon. I work on the marketing team at Furnished Finder, but I'm also a midterm rental landlord of my own. So my family and I have a portfolio of 13 properties, 12 of which are midterm rentals. So we are all in on the midterm rental strategy. So my day-to-day life, I get to work behind the scenes at Furnished Finder. And then also we're growing our own kind of midterm rental business and portfolio on the flip side.
I absolutely love that because so often in our industry, of course, we meet fabulous vendors from all over the place, but actually it's not too often that someone within a vendor is actually also investing. So I love that.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you got started. Did you get started in MTRs and then you found your role at Furnished Finder, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, my family and I had always wanted to get into real estate investing. At my last position, I worked at a commercial real estate investment firm. So I understood the power of real estate for, building wealth and cash flow and just all the advantages we all know from real estate. But I knew kind of commercial real estate wasn't really my jam, wasn't sure where to go. We ended up becoming somewhat of accidental landlords because we were building the current house that I'm in right now. And there was a clause in that contract where you had to have your current home on the market within 7 days of signing to build your new house. And for most of our friends in the neighborhood who were moving over to this new neighborhood, that meant they were going to be in an apartment for 9 months, a year, something like that. We were very not excited about that. We've got kids, we've got pets. We're not interested in a double move. We were not interested in a small space. We weren't interested in all of that, right? It was a really big struggle for us, but we found a loophole in the contract that if you kept your property and leased it out, all you had to show was a signed lease within 7 days of closing. So essentially it bought you the entire time they were building the house to figure out, find a tenant, all this stuff. So we were like, okay, we will do that. So we did that. We've heard kind of the hesitation from friends and family, like, what if the toilet clogs at 2 a.m., this and that. But it worked fantastic. We got to see the property appreciate over the next 5 years. And we actually just sold that property recently. And it was a great investment for our family. So that just kind of led us to okay, we now know the power of real estate. We've seen the power of real estate. How do we do more? And that was right around the time that I started working at Furnished Finder, so almost 3 years ago. And it was like, okay, this whole midterm rental thing could be really great, right? Yeah, it's a thing. So the more I learned about it just at work and getting into my position, I was like, okay, this could be kind of our sweet spot. So we really just kind of dove in and we started with a small studio apartment arbitrage. Like we literally started as small as we could. And then it just keeps working. So we just keep scaling and learning along the way.
I love that. And I want to talk with you about that studio apartment because there are so many people out there who believe that in order to build wealth in real estate or in order to have a strong ROI, you have to buy some massive luxury property. And actually, a good portion of my own portfolio are very small properties. They're beach condos. They're small beach condos. And I'm just curious why you chose a studio, number one. And number two, talk to us a little bit about how you found that first deal and how you approached that landlord.
Sure. Yeah. So we really liked the idea of starting small because it was like, we get to test out everything in our heads that was like, okay, this is going to be great. All of my investment thesis is going to come true, but it was like, okay, let's test it. Mm-hmm. I also personally really like the concept of, if you have a vacancy with a smaller property, your expenses are lower, right? Mm-hmm. If something gets damaged, it's usually a lot less. Like it's just everything is on a more manageable scale. I think a lot of people on the flip side say, well, I'd rather have fewer properties and have them be larger. I think it's just kind of a preference, right? I would prefer to have more properties that are smaller, be really, really good at efficiently managing them, which is not as difficult when you get into the midterm space, than have like more high risk. Mm-hmm. We do have a property that we're actually selling right now that is our only other single family home investment property. And it's in Southeast Florida. And we just kind of saw that like, okay, when there's a vacancy, it's a big hit. When there's a hurricane, there's a big hit. Now on the flip side, when it's full, it's a big win. But like my personal tolerance for that is not as great. And it's just a personal thing. So arbitrage was another thing similar to that, where it was like, okay, this will let us really see like any of the flaws with our kind of investment thesis or any of these opportunities that we're not really noticing. I think it's like dating before you get married, right? It was like, okay, this lets us like test the market. Like you don't know what you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't know what I'm not aware of in this market. I'm in Denver. My family is in Iowa. So we actually, our midterm rentals are mostly in Iowa because I like that market better. But it was like, let's just test this out. And so we were like, how small can we start? What is the least amount of money we can invest just to test it out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so forgive me, I feel like I need to go back to 7th grade geography, but how far is Iowa from Denver? Like what's the distance?
Yeah. So it's about 900 miles. So
it's not around the corner.
Okay. Not around the corner. It's a solid 12, 13-hour drive. But my family, my mom and my brother are close to most of our properties, and my sister's about an hour and a half away.
Okay. And so when you chose that market, how did you identify, hey, this is the apartment I want to potentially arbitrage? How did you make that selection?
Yeah, a lot of it is based purely on numbers, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, if for any of this to work, you have to have the numbers. And I think when you get into arbitrage, the numbers become even more important because you've got two layers of people trying to profit there, right? You've got the owner and the main landlord. They want a spread over their expenses and what you're paying. And then I also want a spread. So the numbers have to be really solid. So we found a property that was close to actually the hospital that me and my brother were born at. So it's a solid, community hospital. We knew there'd be a demand for travel nurses and traveling medical professionals there. It's also close to the little downtown of that city, where we knew that there'd be, corporate travelers, things like that. So, and then it just became a point of, on paper, where is a property that I could potentially double the rent? That's kind of our basis, is if we're arbitraging, we want to more or less double what we pay. And because then you're going to take out your utilities, you're going to take out any, potential vacancies and stuff, and you're still going to have a pretty decent spread. So then it just kind of came to like, okay, let's plug some of these numbers, right? So let's start seeing what would pan out.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And so when you came across property that from a numbers perspective, it looks like it pencils out well, we still have to get the okay from the landlord.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're okay with the whole concept. So how did that conversation go?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are really intimidated by that conversation. For me, it's come down to a few things. First of all, it's picking up the phone. This is not an email. This is not a text. Like, this is not you filling out a contact form. This is a phone call. And like, I had to put on my big girl pants and like pick up the phone, right? And it's uncomfortable, and it's definitely not something that, I would prefer to be doing all day long. But what you have to remember is that when you're proposing this to a potential landlord, you are a partner to them. Like, we are a true asset to the landlords that we work with because we pay rent on time every single month. The properties are very well taken care of. They get professionally cleaned every, 3 to 6 months when we have a turnover. We have, if something is broken, we address it right away. Right. Like, and that's how we are positioning it to them. We're also positioning, and this is where I think midterms do have a leg up on short term and the arbitrage front, is like, one of the first things I tell them is like, we're hosting people who are coming to the community to serve. We're hosting travel nurses. We're hosting professors who are coming in first semester. We're hosting families who had a flood or a fire at their house and they need somewhere to stay. Like, we're not hosting people coming in for the weekend or going to the beach or that don't care about the property, right? Like, these are people that are often homeowners themselves and they need somewhere to live, right? So once a property owner really understands that, it's a much easier conversation. Typically, pretty quick if it's a partnership that's going to work or not. But like, I mean, think about it. Like, from my perspective, I'm like, what do I want out of a tenant? I want someone who's going to take care of my property and who's going to pay on time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm definitely doing that,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that typically, pretty quickly whether someone is going to be a good fit. Talk to us about what those maybe key factors are. What things go off in your head like, oh, this is a good option, or nope, not going to work.
Yeah, I'm looking for a partner or a property owner who's open to kind of thinking differently, right? So, when I call them and I ask, hey, do you do corporate leases, or, can I explain our partnership model to you, or have you heard of travel nurses? Whatever I'm used to open that conversation. Sometimes people have a little bit of like, it's like stranger danger, but it's like scam danger. They're afraid of like anything that's different is bad. And I just, we're completely like, nope, I don't do that. Whatever. It's like, okay, like, that's fine. I don't want to convince you. I just want to explain what we have to offer. Then it's like, okay, that's not going to work. But if it's somewhere where it's like, hey, like, we partner with you, we place these traveling medical professionals or these corporate travelers or families, and like, your home would be great for us to work with. Can I tell you how we are as tenants and kind of how it works? Really, it's once they're open to that conversation that it's like, it's just about making a relationship at that point, right? Like, you have to get over the fact that like, you're not. A lot of people think I'm trying to convince them. I'm trying to get them to work with me. I'm trying to, how do I get someone to agree to it? It's like, you're not. You have to stop positioning it like that, right? Because this is just as good for them as it is for you. I mean, we have one property owner who I think have 7 or 8 rentals with them. Yeah. So for them, like, we're a really solid tenant, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very much a two-way street. And that's how you have to position yourself as like, you are giving just as much value as you're getting.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I love that perspective. And I think that that's an important way to look at it, because to your point, I think a lot of people have some major heart palpitations, number one, about picking up the phone, right? Number two, it can feel like, okay, to your point, I've got to convince them or sell them on this concept. And through just a casual and organic conversation, you might say, hey, listen, this is what I offer. Would you like to hear more?
Right. Exactly.
If they say no, then you're like, okay, great. Have an awesome day.
Sometimes I'll look for quirky properties or properties that have been for rent for a while, because then you're offering an even better solution for them, right? Because I don't know, since a studio apartment might be kind of hard to rent long term, for midterm it's not, right? So it works for both of us.
Right. And now that you've been doing this a while, are there certain types of properties and sizes that are still your favorites? Do you still love those studios and smaller properties, or have you graduated to bigger ones, or what does your portfolio look like today?
Yeah, it's hard. We have probably 3 or 4 studios. We have a handful of 1-beds. We have two or three 2-beds. We have a 3-bed townhouse. And we have a single family home that we also arbitrage. We have a mix of owning and arbitrage. It's hard to say a favorite. I like to think about it like the studios are like a base hit, right? Like they're like solid. They're always full, right? But like they don't pull in as much rent just because they're smaller, but you add them all up and they're great, right? The single family home we had is a total home run because it's great for like insurance claims or families who had something happen to their home or they're relocating. They typically have a higher budget. But again, it's that like, when it's not full, it's a little harder to carry.
Yeah.
So I try to keep our portfolio where it's kind of like a triangle. Like we have the most of the small properties and then we just kind of rank up. As long as that proportion is in line, that kind of matches my risk tolerance, because it's like, I think about like the smaller properties are carrying the risk of the higher ones. So that no matter what mix we have now with midterms, like we always have a good occupancy rate, at least thus far. There's such good demand for it, but it does like spread out the risk a little bit.
Sure. And I think it's something that's really also important to call out. You've mentioned a couple times your risk tolerance, and this is what you feel comfortable with. And I also think, we talked about the size of the property and how there are some people that just preach you have to have these huge luxury mansions in order to do well. And you and I both know that that's not the case. I think it's also important to understand your own risk profile. What am I comfortable with? And what you're comfortable with might be different than the next person. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer. 100%. It's about what's right for you, right?
Yeah. And you have to know. And sometimes you might think you have one risk tolerance, and then you get in there and you're like, ooh, too much for me. Yeah. Right. Or like, oh, I can handle a little bit more, right? But it really is like, you've got to find that. And once you find it, like really hone in on it and don't try to go, you don't have to go outside of it, right? There's plenty of space within your area.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you, and I would be so fun to hear your perspective, obviously as an investor yourself, but also working for Furnish Finder. So many people I know are utilizing these days a hybrid approach where it's hybrid MTR, midterm rentals, and hybrid short-term rentals. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about if you use that approach in your own portfolio and what you feel like some of the benefits are for folks.
Honestly, I think it's genius. I think it really is matching kind of like, the short term, you have a lot higher income, right? So like if you can incorporate that into your mix at all, it's only a win. But managing short term year round is a lot, right? Especially if you have like a high season or a low season, or if there's a time where you want to have personally a little bit more of a low season, right? Like during the holidays or something, or over the winter months, whatever it is. The demand for midterm is not seasonal, right? It's very much a needs-based demand. So like, a hospital needs workers, a family needs to be relocated, a family sold their house and doesn't have their new house yet, or they're locked in at a 3% interest rate. So instead of moving, they're going to demo their house and renovate the whole thing, right? Like these are needs, not wants, and wants are seasonal. So I think it's fantastic. I think you just have to be very, very intentional. Where I see people get into areas where they get disappointed is like, oh, hey, I really wanted to try a short-term rental, midterm rental hybrid, but I just never have the calendar space for a midterm. So how I've seen it work successfully is two ways. One is the seasonal approach where it's like, okay, during this 6 months or this 4 months or whatever, I'm doing short-term and I'm going all in, I'm doing short-term. Then at a certain point, I'm going to flip the switch and I'm going midterm. And by flip the switch, it's like you don't allow bookings under 30 days. Because if you have a nurse who wants to come in and a 13-week contract and you booked one weekend in that 3 months, you just eliminated yourself from being available for that 3-month stay, right?
Yeah.
So truly coming in and like flipping the switch like a light switch. The other way I've seen it done really well is that you pick a primary strategy, short-term rental or midterm rental. It works better if you choose midterm rental as your primary strategy because of what I just explained. But you say, okay, I'm going to book a midterm and then, I have a 3-week gap until my next midterm tenant moves in. I'm going to fill that space with short-term, right? So short-term kind of like if you think of like a jar of rocks and you fill it with bigger river rocks, like the short term becomes your sand where you're filling in the gaps with short term. And that can also really help boost your revenue. So I think it's honestly a genius strategy, and it gives you a little bit of relief, and it gives your property a little bit of relief from all the ins and outs. You just have to, you can't just slap it up and hope that the calendar all aligns. Like you've got to have some intentionality there.
Totally. No, I think that's really good. I use a STR MTR strategy at the beach for seasonal purposes.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Probably a good 8 months out of the year, I'm short term, but November to February at the beach is like crickets. Like nobody comes to the beach except for the snowbirds who are coming from the Northeast. And so, yeah, absolutely. And it's a great way, at least in my market, to be able to drive revenue all year long versus have your property sit empty, right?
Yeah.
So good. Now, I'm curious from your perspective and what you've seen and experienced yourself, what do you feel like are the key operational differences between that short-term and midterm strategy?
Yeah.
I have a feeling I know which one is your favorite, but I'm also curious to hear you share that.
I'm curious which one you think is my favorite.
I think you're going to tell me you like midterm better, but we'll see.
I mean, I like midterm better, and here's why. It's because my family has a very busy life. Like I'm working full time. My husband works. We've got kids. We've got pets. We've got sports. We've got all the things. There's no way that we could manage a short-term portfolio. We would have to get a manager or someone that we could offboard it to. And at that point, with what it would cost me, I might as well go midterm. Now, I say that, but like the properties I have are not on the beach, right? So like I could make the numbers work with short-term totally if you have I'm not saying you can't do that with a manager. Obviously it can, right? Sure. The properties we have are like in the Midwest. They're very things that they're not, nobody's going surfing or hunting for seashells. Right. So what I like operationally about midterms is it's just so simple. Right? Like I get the tenant moved in, I answer a couple questions, and then like they're good unless something goes wrong. Yeah. Like unless the dishwasher breaks or the ice makers, and I freaking hate ice makers. If there's one thing in this world that is trying to drive me crazy, it's ice makers and circuit breakers. Like, why would they always break all the time? But they're, that's what I hear from them. Otherwise, like, they're settled in.
Yeah. I totally agree. So, the bulk of my own portfolio are short-term rentals, and I own it in 2 different vacation markets and manage in 2 different vacation markets. And I also just recently launched my first midterm rental that is a co-hosted property. And I kind of feel like, wow, like this is so easy compared to what I'm used to, right? In the world of short-term rentals. So I'm actually loving it. It's so much more simple, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. And I think it's a nice kind of like elementary step too. Like if you want to eventually expand your portfolio and you want to have, some midterms, some short terms, or explore that hybrid, midterms are a great place to start and kind of establish that foundation, because you can set up your like very basic systems, very basic, move in, move out procedures, things like that. It's direct booking with you, especially on Furnished Finder. So like, you're not getting all of those booking fees taken. You're not getting the commissions taken. So it's just, everything is so much simpler and you learn so much than if you want the hybrid, or let's say you want to have 3 midterms, 3 short terms, however you want to find that mix, you've built that foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's talk about the different OTAs. So talk to us a little bit about the difference between a Furnished Finder and an Airbnb. What does that look like for a midterm rental host?
So the way I think about it, and I think this resonates really well with short-term rental hosts, is on Airbnb, you put a lot of effort into like your keywords and your title and making sure that you're like completely optimized and like your profile looks great. Everything is kind of on the front end. And then you're kind of sitting and waiting for a booking. Right? Like, and you keep tweaking with stuff, but like really you're waiting for your phone or your email to like ding, like you got a booking, and you're like, yay, I get mugged. It's so awesome, right? But then like, it's kind of like your work begins, because there's, it's just a lot heavier lift with the management. With Furnished Finder and midterm rentals, it's the opposite, because the tenant experience and the relationship with your tenant is so different, right? So yes, we want you to have an amazing listing. We want you to put all the effort into that, making it high quality. But you pay $149 per year per listing to list your property. We connect you with a bunch of tenants, and tenants can reach out to you directly. Tenants can kind of send out a radio signal, and landlords can apply if they have a property that's a fit. So it's more of like a matchmaking service where we're helping you find the right tenant. And then once you find that tenant on the platform, we don't take the booking, we don't take the commission or any type of like percentage. And you get to use your own lease, you get to use tenant screening. And then once you have all of that, it's very hands-off, like we said. So it's kind of flipping it, because the relationship with a midterm tenant is so different than a short-term tenant.
Interesting.
You want to know them. Like, they're in your property for 3 months. You want to know who they are. You want to know what's going on.
Right. And do you have, either through Furnished Finder or again through your own experience, do you have a favorite way of screening tenants or screening guests? Again, like from a short-term perspective, we're asking a variety of questions. Hey, where are you coming from? Why are you coming into town? What does that look like for you as a midterm rental host?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the first part. The first part's like my gut screening. Like, what you coming to town for? Do you tell me a little bit about yourself? And that is really easily done just through, you can message on the platform, or you can call, or you can text. Or I've had a tenant FaceTime me before because they were like, I would like to see you're a human. And I'm like, not a robot, I'm a human. But I also like to do an actual background screen, credit check, and like eviction history with tenants of mine, because they are there longer, right? And they're going to be at my property for 3, 6. I have one tenant who's in a property almost for a year now. Like, they're going to be there for a while. So I use our Furnished Finder tool called KeyCheck for that. You can use any screening tool you like, or any process you like. You don't have to use ours. I like ours because it is made specifically with midterms in mind. But yeah, I think it's really important that you get a clear picture of it's a relationship, right? Like you want it to be a successful relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I'm also curious too, like you, I host remotely. So I do have a few properties that I host here locally, but the vast majority of my portfolio are hours and hours away from me. From your perspective, what are some of the key challenges with managing remotely and how do you navigate those?
Honestly, I think some of the most difficult things for me are the simplest, and that's on me. I need to get better about taking pictures where the trash cans and the dumpsters are and not trying to explain it in words. I need to get better about sending photos or a video of how to work a lockbox versus just I sometimes expect people to know how to work lockboxes because I'm doing them all the time when that's not something you encounter on a day-to-day basis. Or like it's like the simple things for me, right? And I think luckily that's very easily solved. And ice makers, I hate ice makers.
Girl, I actually, now that you mention that, that is probably the most often appliance maintenance item that we are calling people in for are ice makers.
Mm-hmm. And I have stopped fixing them. I just get a countertop ice maker. Not fixing them anymore because I'm mad at them.
Mr. and Mrs. Ice Maker God, Katie is no.
I think that's how like GE and Maytag, that's how they're actually sustaining their business. It's because an ice maker breaks so often and they have to send out, the Maytag specific ice maker fixer, or you have to buy a new part. I'm over it. There's so many countertop ice makers. That's my special tangent for the day.
There you go. I love it. Yeah. I do want to ask you, you mentioned lock boxes. Can you tell us a little bit about how you manage the locks with a rental arbitrage unit,
right.
Specifically apartments, right? How do you navigate?
And that's the only reason I have lock boxes. Is on the properties that we own, we switch out to a digital lock. It's like the first thing we do. But I'm not going to switch a lock if it's not my property. A, that's going to be way beyond the lease. And B, they have things where they have to come in and do a city inspection or change the furnace filters. Or one thing that's really nice about an arbitrage is when the furnace stops working and the water heater or the dishwasher, I don't have to, like, they have a maintenance person, or if they don't have a maintenance person, they are figuring it out, right? So they will make sure that repair person gets an access to a key if my guest is not at the property at the time, right? So I can't go changing the locks. So I do lock boxes. I keep them on the front door or the outside of the building if it's a condo or an apartment. I just leave it there. Nobody notices a lockbox. They're everywhere. It's one of those things where when you start paying attention, you see them all over, like commercial properties and stuff everywhere. They're everywhere. So I leave them. I think it's important to get a higher quality one if you're in any type of area with weather, humidity, or freezes. It's easy to buy a cheap one. It's smarter to buy a $50 one. But yeah, that's one of the biggest inconveniences with arbitrages, but that's not a very big inconvenience. So it's not a huge thing.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. Now, you also mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, if I heard you correctly, you have a townhome in your portfolio. With townhomes, we have HOAs to deal with. Talk to me a little bit about your opinion of HOAs and if you've had any challenges working with them.
Yeah. So we have 3 midterm rentals that we own that all are in HOAs. And I love them. I love the HOAs. And here's why. And I know like everybody hears HOA and they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it, whatever. They're in small HOAs. Okay. So like the HOA documents are like 10 pages long. They're very simple, down to earth HOAs. What I love is I never have to think about a roof. I never have to think about lawn care. I never have to think about the trash servicer. I never have to think about snow removal. if there's a storm and the landscaping all needs to be redone, I don't have to think about it. I only have to think about the four walls and in. So
Yeah.
I love them for those reasons. Now, that said, if I was in a really restrictive HOA or something like that, it'd be an issue. The HOAs that I'm in have 30-day rental minimums. So it's great with me, right? I'm hitting that 30-day rental minimum. So it's gravy. And I don't ever have to think about shoveling the snow.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, again, a lot of my properties are at the beach. And when we first started looking for properties to purchase, we intentionally wanted to be in a condo because we thought, well, if there's a massive storm, like I can't run down there and board up the windows. I'm not local. So it was a benefit to us to not have to worry about storms or roofing or anything like that. So I think, obviously, the word HOA makes a lot of people shudder, but you can operate successfully within an HOA.
And there's a whole spectrum of HOAs.
Yes.
Right. I mean, one of the HOAs I'm in, they haven't changed their documents since 1975. Like quite literally, it is a scan from someone who used a typewriter, typed them all out and printed them. They haven't changed since then. Right. Like, and then there's the type of HOAs where there's drama and there's this and that. I think you just have to make sure that you read the documents, or you have a lawyer or a realtor, whoever you're working with, who's really comfortable with those documents and understand what you're getting in. But they can be a huge asset. Like they're going to get a better price on lawn care because they're going to do the whole area versus just your place. Right. I also like that in my insurance for those properties, I have coverage for if there's ever any special assessments. So not only do I not have to pay for the roof if a huge storm comes through, if it does come through and we get hit with a special assessment, I'm covered for up to, I don't know, like $10,000 or something of that. So I can even add that into my insurance. So there are those benefits. You just want to make sure that it aligns with what you're looking for.
Tell us about your insurance provider. Who do you use?
I use a teeny tiny little company in Iowa, and they are fantastic. So here's what I would say. I love Steadily. I love Proper. Steadily I've found to be especially competitive with pricing. But I like to get quotes from everywhere. And this was one where I worked with an insurance broker. A lot of the insurance brokers you can't really use if you're short term, right? It's in the world of insurance, 30 days and up is seen as quote unquote long term. So you get a break when you're midterm. But that saying, if you're going to do a hybrid situation, something like Proper or Steadily is really helpful. I like that Steadily you can get a quote. And actually the quote that I got on Steadily, and I could truly short term it with them as well, was not far off from the quote that I have that I end up going with. That's teeny tiny in order to give me that flexibility. But that was for a property that's in that HOA where I can't do it under 30 days anyway. Yeah, there's so many tools out there now. It's like there's no reason not to do these things, right? The tools are at our fingertips. This never happened before.
Yeah,
it's all right here.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. So one last question: if someone were just getting started in the world of midterm rentals, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I would say you're never going to learn behind a screen what you could learn just trying it. Like learn until you're just comfortable enough and then try it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's you're kind of back to basics with midterms. I like to hit go when we're about 80% ready because you're never going to be 100% ready. Like ever.
Amen.
I'm not 100% ready to have kids and I'm 12-year-old. Like, I'm still not ready to be a mom.
Right.
Here they are. So
here they are.
Push yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's wonderful advice. I think so often people feel stuck because they're waiting for that perfect time, and The truth of the matter is there's never going to be a perfect time.
No.
Yeah.
And all we hear in the media is why real estate is terrible every single day. Yeah, it's fine. Right?
Yeah.
Like people are traveling, people are taking vacations, people are traveling, like people are moving. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I want to move to what I like to call the lightning round. And I'm going to ask you some questions and just ask you to answer with the very first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
First question is, where is your favorite place to vacation?
Ooh, Hawaii.
Ooh, do you have a certain island that's your favorite?
I don't even care. It's perfect there. I've only been there twice, but it's like perfect. Life slows down there,
Yes.
which I just love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. What's one place you've never been that you want to visit?
Bhutan.
Okay. I have heard of that. And I've heard that it is like one of the fastest growing economies in the world. I don't know if it's the fastest growing,
one of the fastest growing economies. My husband and I have been interested in going there since we got married. What I like is they really restrict, they really preserve their culture. So they restrict how many tourists can come in, and you have to be like with a group or someone official. They have, at least last time I looked into it, they have one stoplight in the entire country, and they don't measure. Yeah, they don't measure gross domestic product. They measure gross domestic happiness.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Right.
I love that.
I know someday I'll get there.
And where is Bhutan?
That's a really good question. Better for my husband. It's in Asia.
Okay, I was going to say it's either Asia or Africa or somewhere.
No, it's in Asia. I'm geographically challenged. I couldn't get you to the grocery store if you asked me to.
That's awesome. Okay, note to self, don't ask Katie for directions anywhere.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Oh, that's great. Okay, next question. What's one thing you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting out?
No one knows what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing.
So don't try to be perfect. Just take action.
It's everybody's first time at this life, at least that we know of, right?
Yep.
Just give it a go. Try.
Yep.
And it's totally okay to fail. In fact, if you're not failing, you're not trying for enough.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Amen, sister.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
You can't outthink an emotion.
Okay, let's think about that. Okay, hold on. Hang on, let me think about that. Emotion.
So the way Adam was explaining to me is like, right, like if you're anxious, you can't think yourself out of anxiety. If you're depressed, you can't think yourself out of depression. That's why laying in bed never works. And that's why, we talk about like analysis paralysis. If you're overwhelmed, thinking about it is not going to help, right? You have to do something. So you've got to go on a walk. You've got to get physical exercise. You've got to do something physical, or you have to try something. It doesn't have to be like literal, but the only way to get out of being scared of something is to try.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I just wrote a book called Live Big, and
congratulations.
Thank you. It's currently, at the time of this recording, it just got moved into production. So we're through the heading. Hallelujah.
I would love to get a copy of that. That'd be awesome.
Yes. But I couldn't agree more. So in the book, I talk about, how much our emotions can play a huge role in either our success or lack thereof. And I share tools to actually train your brain to work yourself out of those emotions. It is a skill. And when you learn how to do it, your whole world opens up. My whole life.
You're like living this, right? Because it's you can't think yourself out. You can't outthink an emotion. You have to do something, even if it's a mental action. You have to
Yes.
You have to do something to get out of it. Yeah. And I work with that on my kids a lot too. My son has some anxiety and he'll get worried about something or upset about it. It's like, okay, what can we do about this? Because worrying about it isn't going to help us not worry about it.
Yeah. I think worrying is one of the most grossly underestimated wastes of time and energy, because worrying gets you nowhere.
But the whole time you're learning, you think you're solving your problem.
Oh, yeah.
You know? You're like, wait, my favorite friend, like, let me overthink this a little bit more. Like, the whole time you're sitting there worrying, or I'll watch my son and I'm like, buddy, you're not getting any closer to where you want to be by sitting there and having more anxiety or more worry and more fear or more, should I get started? Should I do this or should I do this? It's like, no, you should gotta do something.
Yep.
You gotta do something.
Absolutely. Girl, I could talk about that for days. So I can't wait to read your book. Thank you.
Can't wait.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Last question. What's one thing and or person that you're grateful for today?
Well, it's been so fun to talk to you.
Oh,
what's one thing or one? Okay, well, how about I'll give you a lighthearted one and a serious one. I will forever, every single day, be thankful for my caffeine that I can't live without. Because
now are you
serious?
Are you addicted? Like,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. It's a judgment-free zone of however caffeine can get.
No shame, no blame.
Yeah, all the way. And then I will say, secondly, I have 2 kids, and to watch us kind of go through this real estate experiment and watch them be a part of it is really cool as a parent. My grandpa had a small business that he ended up involving my brother in and my uncles. And I almost feel like we're kind of recreating that in version 2.0. And I love creating that. I also love like these pictures on my wall. These are all of our properties. And we have the properties on there even that we've sold. And my son the other day goes, why do we still have that property on there? We sold it. Or one of these on the wall, it's actually, we're going to take a hit on it. We're going to sell it. We're going to take a 5-figure hit on it. He's like, why do you have that one up there? I'm like, because it's all a part of it.
Yeah.
It's all a part of it. So to be able to watch them kind of learn those things now versus I didn't learn them until much later in life is a really rewarding thing.
Amen. Amen. My youngest is 21. We first started investing in real estate when he was about 14-ish, 15.
Yeah.
And he is like getting into private money lending and saving for his first house, and we never have really taught him the business. I told him if he wants to learn, he needs to get his own education. Yeah. But you just never know what your kids are listening to around the dinner table, when you're talking with your spouse, even on a phone call, talking with a landlord, like they are picking it up. So I think, I couldn't agree more that it's so rewarding to see your kids learning just from your own actions.
Yeah. Yeah. And they see you take the risks and they see you be okay with failing sometimes and they see you try something and then get better the next time. Like it's making an impression there and it's fun to see.
Katie, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes. Thanks for having me. This was amazing.
Now, before you go, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the amazing women inside the Female Short-Term Rental Investors Facebook group. Just a week ago, Stacey St posted, has anyone hosted an open house for their short-term rental? And so far, there are 53 women who have chimed in. Stacey, I've never even thought about doing that. And after reading this post and these comments, I might just have to start doing that. And Diana Black actually posted, she said, so I'm actually looking at doing this in January. I'll invite other real estate industry professionals. I'm going to set up 2 areas to have a photographer take headshots for people if they want, paper marketing materials and snacks and drinks. Erica Lynn also posts, if you are in a town with many tourists, it's a great idea. A local friend opened her Airbnb for a Christmas tour, and it was one of the most visited. Ladies, thank you so much for posting the question as well as the awesome comments. This is such a fun idea I would have never known about. So thanks so much again. And with that, that wraps up today's episode. I hope you have an amazing week ahead. And my friend, I will see you very soon.